Morning, everyone. Session Chair, Honorable Mbalu, the UNFPA representative, senators, members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen. I think all protocols observed. My name is Richard Ayah. I'm from the School of Public Health, a doctor and a lecturer there. And what I'm going to take you through is a presentation. We've been talking about the MDGs, but we also have the MDGs end next year. We also have the targets thereafter. So what is it that we're trying to do? And I think in terms of the presentation, you may get a hint of what we should be doing about the situation. But before I begin, the UNFPA representative earlier in the first session talked about 2014 being a kind of a sweet spot in terms of a change in our attitude towards the situation. Now, the presentation that I'm going to give you is quite heavy on numbers. So the first thing I'd like you to do is perhaps just have a little bit of a conversation with yourself. Yeah, this is just going to fall. Is with your stomach, just to check, because studies show that the best way of absorbing numbers is when there's some blood sugar. So you've had tea, and it takes about 25 minutes for the thing to get into your blood system. So just have a check, because by the end of the presentation, what I'd like you to have is at least one number that you come away with, whichever number you pick, because I'm going to give you quite a bit of numbers. So just check that there's sugar now in your bloodstream. And then it'll be that I'll need your attention. So this is not the time to be looking at your phone and stuff like that. This is the lecture a bit of me. So I'll begin. Now, we've got some of these figures, and the situation is one which it's really by choice. And we picked this thing on China. China has a population 30 times the population of Kenya, and we have about the same number of deaths in terms of maternal deaths. So that tells you something about how the magnitude of the situation that we have in Kenya. Now, historically, we were on track just like other countries in the world, and then we got that inflection point, as has been presented, where we refused to improve on our maternal mortality. So it's been going on now for about 20, 25 years. There's some improvement in the last few years, but really, we haven't done too much that has been good. So that is a bit of the history. Now, this has been presented to you. Now, the figures that Dr. Keegan gave you, anything above 2,000, there's some deliberate attempt to kill mothers. Okay, there's what is called the natural mortality rate, which is roughly about 2,000, when you do nothing. So you have to wonder about the counties, the areas where the maternal mortality is approaching 4,000. What's going on? And so these 10, 15 counties with very high mortality rates, akin actually to being at war, but some of them are ridiculously high. So this is one of those slides that could keep us busy for a few days in terms of trying to explain what is going on. The basic fact is this. We have some direct causes of maternal mortality. What happens to the mother at the point when she's delivering, what actually kills her. And then we have indirect causes. So this is a mother who's coming with some other illness that makes her high risk, what we're supposed to pick up in our antenatal care. And then we have the issues surrounding the whole decision making. So some of the things that were mentioned, somebody is pregnant for 40 weeks. Why is it that they're not prepared to deliver? Where is the spouse, the husband, and so on in all this? So we have those other factors ranging from social, cultural to economic factors. So we've had the MDG since 1990, and there's been a global effort to move beyond that to a new target for 2030. Now, the difference from what was done globally before is that the targets that we got reducing by 3/4 were essentially agreed on at a global level, and then cascaded down. And it took a long time for Kenya to get going. So what happened earlier this year is that there's an initiative by the Ministry of Health, donor partners and all, to try and see what should our target be. Given that we failed to meet the earlier target, how do we come up with a target that is reasonable and something that we can achieve? So the idea is that there shouldn't be a country with more than 100 by 2035. So arriving at a target, now you can try and figure out where you are. In fact, there was something in the news that there's now been a spacecraft that has landed on a comet 500 million kilometers away. Now that has taken quite a bit of effort. So members of parliament, senators, you can try and figure out where you are in the scheme of things. Are you still at the bicycle level trying to figure out how to take off? Or are you at the stage where you're about to land at the target? So there's some factors that we came up with. So earlier this year, we went through an exercise to try and see what are the issues that will help us reduce this maternal mortality. So we do know that what the direct causes are. We do know what the indirect causes are. That's to do with the mother and the health system directly. But what are the rest of us supposed to be doing? So there are these 6 or so factors. You're probably most keen on the bit about political leadership, but we'll just go through one by one. So the first is in terms of population, and there's really nothing that we can do about the population, even though I know my colleagues will talk about family planning. What we're talking about in the next 15 or 20 years, the women who are going to give birth over the next 15 years, 20 years have already been born. So we have to deal with it. So our population is 45 million now. It's going to be 60 million by 2030. They already exist. So we can't really try and adjust that. The other factor is in terms of our economy, we pride ourselves on being agricultural, but we're very poor with our agriculture. So even though it contributes relatively little, it employs most of our population. The bits that contribute, the bit in the middle, the service industry, whether it is buying your, whatever people do in the service industry, buying your food or dealing with matatus and so on, that's your service industry. And then you have a little bit of manufacturing going on. Now these are structural issues which are a little bit difficult to adjust over the short term. So what should we be doing? One of them is to have an equitable approach. And that means focusing on these 15 counties. So we can talk about the little money that we have, but until we decide that we have to deal with these areas where there is a problem, we're not going to get very far in terms of achieving our target. And I think we now know where we lie with which these counties are. The next thing is talking about access and quality of care. And one of the puzzling questions has always been, why is it that in places like Western Kenya, where there are health facilities, women still do not go to deliver? There is something they know. They know that the quality of care is poor. So that's what this says. It says that if you're in Western Kenya and you try and deliver in a health facility, chances of your baby coming out alive because of the facilities that exist are relatively poor. That's what that means. And you can go province by province. Nairobi is the highest in terms of skilled delivery. There's a gap when you look at the newborn. And the mother is interested not just in delivering, but in delivering a baby alive. So it's a combination of things. So women know, families know that the quality of care that we have is poor. So what do we do beyond the health system? Now, we try to map out, in terms of effort required, these 6 factors. So that's what we're displaying there. So we're saying maternal death, we have the direct and indirect factors. And then we have the approaches we should take. And we try to get some essence about the weight. So we're trying to get to a target of 132 per 100,000. How do we do it? 1, an equitable approach. If we focus on these 10 to 15 counties, that's the equitable approach, we should reduce mortality by 20% of the 480 that it is today. If we deal with sociocultural issues and quality of care, that's another 34, 35%. If we're to talk about access, this is particularly for the northern parts of the country, then we would be able to reduce maternal mortality by that 16%. Now, you look at the last two, economic growth, and the issue is that our population continues to grow faster than we can increase our economy. So in terms of money dropping from somewhere, even though you might get excited by the US ambassador saying so much money will come, really, it's up to us to figure out what to do. So in terms of the contribution, we didn't think too much of that, talked about 2.5%, and then there's the political will at just 1.5%. We don't expect, I know we have some legislators who are obs-gynaes and so on, but we don't expect them to go and deliver mothers. We don't expect members of parliament or senators to carry mothers in their cars to deliver. What we do expect is the leadership to be able to talk to the health system and make them accountable. So there's something in the Hansard, looking at, I have an interest in that. If you look at the Hansard of the 1960s, members of parliament knew their doctors by name. So you'd see questions like, would the minister tell us when they're going to post a doctor since Dr. Ayah left Busia district last week? So they knew their they knew their doctors by name. So the challenge is this. You can see that the causes of death really are with the health system. We're outside of the immediate health system. We need to make our health system feel wanted, feel appreciated. So you can look at your phone now and just check whether you have the number of your medical superintendent, your midwives in the area. That would be a step in the right direction, because ultimately we want mothers to come into the health system and to deliver within the health system. And the problems we have is that our health system is underfunded and under-resourced and unappreciated. So, in conclusion, if we hold our health system accountable, and if we hold ourselves accountable towards this target, we would be saving about 5,268 lives a year moving forward. So that really is the target. And even though I've talked a lot of numbers, we have to remember that each one of these really is a life. So typically we tend to have pictures of poor people looking really, really bad and so on. But we want a situation where we have smiling women who are pregnant who know that when they go to deliver, they're assured of coming out of it alive. So, Chair, thank you very much. Thank you.